Hey guys, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It is my pleasure to welcome our audience and speakers to today's Alumni Speaker Series session. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for you on YouTube for viewing. There's going to be a link of the recording that we sent out after the session in the coming days. And if you do have any questions, at the bottom of the Zoom, the webinar, there's a Q&A section, and we will definitely try to answer as many of those questions as possible as the event progresses. So before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to take a moment to publicly acknowledge the traditional territory which we live and work in. It's an important step toward reconciliation. So the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. Our main campus is situated, it's actually situated on the Haldimand Track, and that's the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, community building, and it's all centralized within the Office of Indigenous Relations. So as we're likely calling from different places around the world and Canada, I also wish to acknowledge the Indigenous communities globally that have lived and continue to live in harmony with nature. I wish to recognize the innovations that came before us and appreciate the sustainability principles that Indigenous communities have lived by. So before I introduce our esteemed alumni on our panel today, just a quick intro about myself. My name is Lisa Tong. I am a chemical engineer graduate in 01 from the University of Waterloo. I also have an MBA from University of Henley in the UK. My day job, actually, not just my day job, but many of the jobs I do have, I'm an executive director for Estee Lauder, doing strategy and projects within corporate finance. But I'm also a certified coach. I also have my own businesses. So this is a fascinating topic about exploring, is career actually a singular term anymore? I am honored and excited to be the moderator for today's Alumni Speaker Series session, hosting panels and diverse backgrounds. And each of our panelists come with their very own unique career path and story. And today we're going to explore how they navigated that, how they made pivots to where they are. So our speakers will really share how they've leveraged their degree, their co-op work experience, their own personal work experiences, and their passion, something else from within that is going to really challenge and provoke your thinking about considering what it means for you and your careers going forward, what it means to either shift industries, change roles, move into entrepreneurship even, and figuring out what is right for you. So this promises to be an engaging and educational session. And again, throw the questions out, we'll get to them, and definitely make it this really interactive session. So it is my pleasure to honor our panelists today. I have, first with me is Chidi. So Chidi, if you want to just wave.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chidi. So Chidi has experience building startups. She's currently a senior consultant with Deloitte in Canada, carrying out new technology implementation that solves business problems for Canadian companies. All right, we also have Rob. Rob, you want to say hello?
Hello.
So Rob is a professional engineer who has devoted 36 years to the construction industry. His role currently is Executive VP for Bird Construction, but he does have had many twists and turns along the way, which we're going to pull out and explore. All right, so if you want to see the full bios of our panelists and myself, you can visit the event page, and there will be a link to the event page later on in the chat for you to easily access. All right, so we're going to start. Super exciting today. We've got 3 things actually on the table that we're going to talk about. The first is setting expectations. So when you graduated, what was that expectation going forward in your career? That's the first piece we're going to explore. The second piece is, ooh, what if it changes? What next? And then finally, third is around, all right, there's trends going on. What does that mean for me? So these are what we're going to explore in today's session. So the first one is really setting expectations for moving forward in your career, where you are now, either graduating or mid-career or even towards your end career. So what I want to start with first is this question to our panelists, both Rob and Chidi, is when you were a student, what were you expecting from your career in engineering that you were trained to do or that you learned? So I'm going to call on Rob first to answer this question.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So I'd say, like, when I put some notes down on this, my expectations, I don't think varied from a lot of my classmates. It was going to be a pretty traditional career. I think the expectation was I was going to go out, get a job, probably work with one company for quite a long time, probably most of my career. Obviously, start out learning the basics and the technical aspects. I just assumed it was going to be in an engineering consulting firm or something along that lines. And then sort of very logical, just work my way up as to become a manager of some sort, and maybe then a senior manager. And I even kicked around internally, maybe I'll be a CEO someday or something like that. I mean, when you're a student, I mean, I don't think you really have a clue of what all these things mean. But it was, A, it was guaranteed I was getting a job. B, it was going to be better than average in terms of pay. And the world was my oyster, and that's what I was going to do. Now, at the same time, quite frankly, I had no idea what part of engineering I was going to be in, or even if I was going to stay in engineering. I just assumed that was what was going to happen. You know, and my background is civil engineering, so it's, you know, it's fairly diverse in terms of the paths that you can take. But so I didn't know if I was going to be in the environmental end, the geotech, structural. I could pretty much guarantee I wasn't going to be in the structural. I didn't really like structural, so that I wasn't going to go there. But for the most part, you know, and construction was something somewhere in the background that I didn't really have much of an interest, I'd have to say, to be honest, but I didn't understand it either. So, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to work in the private sector or if I was going to work for government. And you have to remember, when I graduated way back in '85, we were still coming out of a very, very nasty recession in 81, 82. And the previous class had only graduated 10%, like actually 10% of the graduating class actually had jobs. And our class was the next one, and I think we got up to about 25%. So the economy was still very sluggish, very slow. So even though I had all these expectations, I was very thankful that I was one of the 25% that was actually offered a full-time job when I graduated. But if I had to turn it all back, I'd say it was pretty traditional, pretty guaranteed that I was just going to keep moving up like this, and there wasn't really any thoughts other than that. That would be my perspective.
Thanks, Rob. Absolutely, yes. So similar to a lot of us, we come into engineering with a certain understanding of what our careers will be.
Right.
And I'd love to hear, Chidi, what's, you know, being from a different generation, from, you know, I love that fact that we're all different generations and different graduating years. So what about you? When you graduated, what was that expectation out of you and your degree?
So mine is a little bit different from Rob's, obviously. So in my undergrad, I studied civil engineering. And, you know, when I was in school, I was really good at math and physics. Like, let's go back to before university, actually. So when I was in high school, I was good at math, physics. So I thought engineering was definitely the way to go. You know, unfortunately, I didn't get very good career advice and guidance. So I just thought engineering was the next way to go for me. Like, you know, obviously you don't want to stay idle and not do anything, right? While you're still trying to figure out what you need to do. So I went into engineering. It worked out really well for me. I was one of the top students in my class. However, when I got to my final year, I realized that I had found a passion in business. So I I guess I couldn't really see what my future in engineering would look like as at graduation, because I had found a new passion. So it's definitely different from Rob's. I couldn't see myself going to the sites, wearing helmets, putting on your protective boots, and working with site engineers and things like that. Like that wasn't something I had envisioned for myself, especially in my final year, considering I had found a new passion in business and entrepreneurship. So yeah, definitely a different path for me.
Great. Yeah. And this is amazing too, right? How we recognize we come into engineering, but what does it really mean at the very end? Right. And it sounds like there's different interpretations that's right for you at the moment when you graduated. And this leads us into the next piece, which is around that pivot. So the second piece around changes in the career. So let's move to this, explore this a little bit with our speakers as well. And I'll share a little bit as well, because this is actually, it happens in the moment. It sounds like, there's changes, Chidi, to you much early on. And Rob, would love to hear your thoughts on what's changed and what's shifted for you in either a role or opportunity, and how did you do it?
First of all, Chidi, I couldn't picture myself out on a job site with a hard hat and boots either, just to be clear. I had this whole other vision of what construction would look like, and thankfully I found it, and it was a really good fit for me. But to go back to your question, and I just want to make sure I've got the right question. Have I been faced with how do we adjust in making changes, or how to? So
or why don't you share with us if there's any changes that was different from your original trajectory before?
Well, pretty much everything, I would say. I would say, so I started with the government back in Ontario on the Ministry of Transportation at the time, and I was in a management training program, basically set for life if I wanted it. So they would move you around to different departments and eventually put you in, and away you go. And about partway through, they had actually transferred me up to Thunder Bay, which is my hometown, and I was not very happy about that, because I wanted to stay in Southern Ontario for many reasons. So they said, well, if you want to get back, the only opening we have is to get you into construction. And I said, construction? I don't know anything about construction. I don't know. And they said, well, it's that or stay where you are. And I went, no, okay, I'll take this construction. And so that was the first change, because I figured I was going to be sort of an office guy and do my things, and primarily I am, but at the time. So that got me one exposure to there. And then I said, well, I want to get back into the engineering side. And I did some stints actually doing design engineering, and there are some bridge foundations out there that have my stamp on it, and hopefully they're still standing. But I think I got to a point where I realized I'm not an engineer's engineer, and so design's not my thing. I kind of liked the construction side because it was tangible, you could see things, and sort of fit my personality better. And I also realized at the same time, the government organization culture wasn't a right fit for me and for my personality. So my first career change was my own choice, and I chose a job in the private sector. I chose construction because it was kind of interesting, and there was some demand for it at the time. So it was kind of a little bit opportunistic as well, and I made the jump there. And so that was on my choice. But then after that, what happened is about a year and a half later, we went into another recession in the early 90s. And again, it was a pretty nasty one. And one day I showed up for work as normal. And the boss called us in one at a time and said, sorry, we're shutting down the company, and we're laying you off effective today. And so there was a career change for me, or a change of course anyway, because first of all, no one ever told you, or told me anyway, when I was going through that, by the way, you could get laid off from as you go through your career path. I suppose they could tell you you'd get fired, but they don't really talk about that either, but that's definitely possible. It definitely does happen. But I just didn't see that coming. And that led to a series of job changes along the way, just scrambling, trying to find work. And then finally I said, okay, this is crazy. I have to settle down. I'm almost 9 years into my career and feeling like I'm going backwards at 100 miles an hour. And I said, I'm going to stay in the construction world. I'm going to stay in the building side of the construction world. And I'm going to find a company that I think I can invest my time and grow my career. So I did some research, I did some homework, I did a lot of interviewing, and I eventually was very lucky to work for a company called PCL Construction for 26 years almost, and never looked back. So sometimes you make the choice for career change, and it's a good choice. It led to about 5 more choices eventually before I found the right choice. But going back to where I was, leaving the comfort and security of the government, it was the right choice. It was the right choice at the time. I didn't expect all the in-betweens, but I eventually got to a spot where it was the right choice for me.
Great. And I'm hearing sometimes you made the choice when you were looking to stay in the industry. So we have one question that's kind of a follow-up on how much did certain criteria influence your choice, Rob, right? Remuneration, the need for growth learning, either a title. How did you balance those criterias at that moment in your career when you were looking for what's next?
Well, some of it depends on where you are. So when you're first starting out, you don't feel like you have any experience, nothing to offer, and you're not feeling like you're in a very strong position to bargain for a particular job. So you kind of almost take what's given to you. But so there was a bit of that when I was looking around, but I really wanted some place that was organized, because I can be a little bit disorganized. There was a place that I could get a lot of training so that I could actually learn how to do things properly, because up until then I'd bounced around with a few companies that were not organized, and I felt like I'm spending a lot of time and not really getting very good training. I'm learning how to do things the wrong way. I really want to find a place that teaches me to do things the right way. And at the time I was looking at, I either want to start my own company or I want to own a piece of another company. So to buy shares or something like that. Quite frankly, I didn't have any clue of what I was talking about, but I was just notionally that was important to me too. So when I did my homework, I kind of looked around and I said, which firms will allow me to buy shares at least and things. And so that helped me narrow it down. And when I found PCL and had conversations with them, it was like, this is a bit weird. These people are all really nice and it feels good. There's got to be something wrong with this. And 26 years later, it was still feeling very good. So I think it's a bit of fit in terms of your personality. It's where you are in the curve. It's what the things that are important to you. And I needed the training and the ability to learn without, there was companies that had enough resources, and important to me, they had enough resources to ride out the ups and downs of the economy and not lay you off at every little dip, because that's what had shaped my first 10 years of my career. Does that make sense or resonate for people?
Thanks, Rob. So it sounds like you were very clear on your own personal criteria at the moment. And with that, it's almost like an assignment, right? Like you knew what you wanted and you went with the list out to search for companies and roles that actually fit or match similar criteria. That's
correct.
Great.
Yeah. And then you hope that things go from there the way you want it to go. But yeah, it was fairly logical, but it was shaped by my experiences up to that point.
Got it.
Which are more informed, if you think about it, than when you're as a student. You're still getting shaped, but now you got the student plus you've got some work experience, and then it's like, okay, not going left anymore. I think I want to go a little further right. That makes
Interesting.
sense.
It's amazing because I think what I'm hearing, Rob, is that the criteria list, we all have one, but it will evolve.
Yes.
As your experience grows, it will evolve. So I think honoring a criteria list for yourself sounds like a way to match and find what's important to you.
Yes, very much so. Very agree.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah. Chidi, share with us what pivoted, like what was that spark that you're like, I don't want to put on a hard hat. I don't want to go out there. What was it?
Okay, so like I mentioned, obviously I mentioned that I did civil engineering in my undergrad. So one of the reasons why I believe I had pivoted was, it was actually an inspiration. So a friend of mine had a business on campus. It was a photography business, and he had a studio, and it was the only studio on campus. He was the only known photographer on campus, and he was doing so well. And he had identified a gap that no one else had seen. Obviously, students have occasions all the time and they need pictures, or they have a birthday party and things like that. And there was no one else to provide that need on campus, right? And he was able to do that, and that was very inspiring to me. So I wanted to also practice my own ability to see a problem and come up with an idea on how to solve it. I was very young then, and obviously I like beauty and I like hair. So in the city where I lived with my parents, so I lived in a city called Abuja in Nigeria, and at the time there was this trend that was going on in the beauty industry where women would wear braided wigs, right? And I realized that hadn't come to the city that my school was. So I schooled in a city called Owerri, and I realized that hadn't come to my city yet. So I was like, you know what, I can do this, right? I can make these braids and sell it, obviously in my free time, because I still had classes. So I would make the braids and I would sell them as a wig, obviously. And people were buying the wigs. And it was really exciting to me that, people were interested in buying something that I was making with my own hands. So yeah, that was really where I realized that I was very passionate about creating something that will solve someone's need. Like that feeling that you get, realizing that you worked on something that is helping someone, or you created something that is helping someone. So that was really the switch for me. And I really wanted to take obviously my passion for that. I remember when after graduation, I was having a conversation with my mom. She wanted me to go do my master's, and I really didn't want to do a master's in civil engineering because I knew that wasn't something that I was passionate about. And so I started doing my research to see if I could find any courses or programs that I could take that could allow me to learn more about business and entrepreneurship, because I really wanted to build something of my own one day. And I came across the MBET program at the University of Waterloo, and I applied. Luckily, I was admitted into the program, and it was a really fun experience, though it was very challenging at the beginning because it was a new playing field. I came from a very math background where students are known to work, they don't have to interact with anyone or make any presentations. So there are lots of skills that I didn't have, going into a new or completely new career. So yeah, but eventually, I got a hang of it, and obviously that it worked out. And switching into consulting was an entirely new thing. So when I think of entrepreneurship and when I think of consulting, I like to think that they are very similar. So if you think of entrepreneurship, you are essentially solving a problem or a pain point for a market, or identifying a need and solving that problem. And when you think of consulting, your clients approach you with a problem or a challenge that they face as an organization, or you pitch to them as well on a new idea that might improve their organization and the ways that they do things. So I like to think that they are very similar, because at the end of the day, you're solving someone's problem, you're solving a pain point. So that was why I believe the switch was very easy for me. The skills that I had gained from the MBET program, being able to stand in front of people and present, because you do that a lot as a consultant. You talk to a large group of people and, putting documents together, like those types of skills were very transferable for me from, entrepreneurship to consulting. And that was how I was able to switch. But I didn't just wake up one morning and tell myself, oh, okay, consulting is the next big step for me. Where I realized that consulting was something that aligned closely with me was, so there was this course that we did when we were in the MBET program. It's called, I believe, corporate entrepreneurship. And at the time, it was taught by Chris Holt. Hi, Chris Holt. So it was taught by Chris Holt. And I really enjoyed that experience. So essentially what the course was about was, so as students in the MBET program, organizations would come to us with problems that they were facing or a new project that they were working on, and they wanted like a new or fresh perspective on it. And so my business or project partner at the time was Deloitte. So I worked with a bunch of people at Deloitte on that project, and it was a really good experience for me, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, I can do this, like I can be a consultant, right? Like it wasn't so different from what you would normally do as an entrepreneur. Just that as an entrepreneur you own your business, or as a consultant you're kind of working with an organization and like a group of people. So that was how I was able to kind of transition from being an entrepreneur to consulting.
Awesome, great. Actually, this is a really good answer. Mike's got a question here around what advice would you give someone to know if they want to make a change? They have no idea what they want to do, right? Do they jump? Do they stay? So I think, Chidi, what you're calling out is you were trying things without this. You don't know what you don't know. That's the one thing I want to throw out, right? So both of you sounds like when you know a little more, you can make an informed decision, right? So Chidi with you is like that business side. You were doing the business while you were in school. Then you knew that's what you wanted. Same with consulting. You didn't know about it until you took one course. Then you knew, right? And same with Rob. Without having been laid off, you didn't know you wanted stability, an organized company. And so it almost sounds like giving yourself permission or taking learning from pilots' experiences to inform going forward. So I just want to see how that lands and what your guidance around that is.
So I'll say the underlying thing for me was really the passion, right? So like I said, I knew that I wanted to do something that is, I think to myself, okay, I worked on something that is helping someone's processes better. I did something that's making someone's life better. Like that feeling, that passion, wanting to help people and solve problems, I would say that was the underlying thing for me, even though I have transitioned from entrepreneurship to consulting and maybe, who knows, something else someday, right? I believe that the underlying passion of wanting to help people or solve a problem was what really drove me. So I don't know if that answers Mike's question on how would you know?
It does, because it's your intuition, your own inner calling that you're honoring, right? So almost to that point, right, to Mike and for Chidi, is that there's something that you know and feel is right. And just pilot it, just go for it, just try it, right? So be guided by your heart and less your head, right? So this is where I think we're getting a difference around when I graduate as an engineer, they tell me I got to go and be an engineer. But, right, what's the heart saying? So Rob, I'd love your perspective on this piece as well.
Yeah, the follow your heart is very easy to say and hard to do. I think it's easier for some people than others. But if you're like me and you're kind of wired in a certain way, and it's pretty good, and we're going to go step A, step B, step C, thou shalt not deviate. Going and following your heart is like, your parents are looking at you going, are you crazy? Like, you gave up the secure government job for that?
Yep.
And I said, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time. It's like, but I think what happens is that, to your point, whether it's follow your heart or your passion, Chidi, or there's just something inside you that says, I seem to gravitate towards this more than that. And I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, you start off your career. I didn't plan on 4 layoffs in 3 years and doing all these things. They kind of happened, but they helped me sort of eliminate things that I didn't want to do. You know, and for one thing, I said, I'm not getting into the buildings construction. I'm going to stay in the heavy civil side. And what do? I get interviewed by a company that says, there's a lot of buildings going up. You know, they're civil guys. And they said, would you like to start like a buildings division? I'm like, what? I need a job. Okay, sure. And that sort of got me back into the building side. Now, you know, a couple more shots to get it right. And then I got on with the company. And the more I started to learn properly and work with other individuals that were real professionals. And when I say professionals, that doesn't mean they have a professional designation. They just have experience, class, really good communicators, very, very smart people. And then you started to see what you could contribute to building. And that's what I really like about it. You can actually touch the product at the end of the day. I really started to enjoy it because my personality fit. I didn't have to think about what I was going to say. Of course, you have to think about what you say. You can't be unfiltered, but you're aligned with the culture of the company and or the business or the background of the business you're in. You don't have to think about that because it's kind of like a fish swimming in water. You don't see the water, but it feels right, and then you can just sort of concentrate on getting better at doing what you do and learning and sort of you have to make mistakes, right? So the whole thing now is make mistakes in a controlled manner that not going to bring down the company, not going to in an unsafe manner, etc. But you learn from your mistakes and you say, okay, next time I would do this a little different, that a little different, and eventually you get there. So the passion piece, yes, it's I mean, some people have more passion than others, but I think there's something inside you that like a little compass that says, I like going this way for whatever reasons, and I'm going to stop fighting it and start to find areas, companies or things that work in this area that I can then go, and it helps narrow it down because, honestly, whether we have engineering degrees or chemistry degrees or whatever, we're all smart people. We have literally the ability to do anything we want. Look at Chidi, she's off into the entrepreneur and business side. All of us could do that if we wanted to, but we follow different paths for different reasons. But you can only do sort of one thing at one time and do it well, despite all the multitasking, everything people do. But in terms of a career, and I think the more that you experiment and eliminate and narrow down and listen to your inner self saying, I want to go that way. And I don't even know why I want to go that way, but I seem to keep wanting to go there. That takes a lot of the pressure off. And then eventually you find the right fit and the right combination where you say things and people go, yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, I kind of like it around here. they seem to listen to me and they like me and respect me. And I'm sure, Chidi, you get that in your world for sure. That's my take on it. Like, whether it's passion or compass or whatever it is, you got to follow it. Got to listen to it.
I'd like to add one more thing. So switching career paths is terrifying. It was most definitely terrifying for me because I remember moments feeling like I didn't know what people were talking about. People would be having conversations and I was like, what are they talking about? I feel so lost. So it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but I realized something that how I knew that this is really what I wanted to do was when it got difficult and when it got tough, I didn't run away. Like I was willing to stay and figure it out, even though it was very difficult to do. So I would say maybe that's another way that you could know And also, like, Lisa said, like, be willing to try things. Like, the more you try, and if you find that you're sticking to something, no matter how difficult it might seem, then maybe that's it for you. Like, that's what you would say, is your passion or you're interested in, no matter what. So yeah.
Great. No, thank you. Yeah. And so for me, for my story, for those just to connect and add in, is I am still in corporate. However, because of this risk adversity that I have, I actually go and start building my businesses on the side. So actually I do coaching on the side. I have my own coaching business and a few other small businesses, but it's cheaty because I didn't want to really step out of corporate yet. I'm not fully ready to pivot. But this is where I think I want to challenge people and say, what is the right way? There is no right or wrong, or how many jobs you can have, or how many things, right? And so I think the one thing I'm taking away from both Rob and Chidi is intentionality, right? Rob is saying that I'm intentionally saying that I'm going to go down and commit to this company and start intentionally looking for what I want. Same with Chidi. I'm intentional that I want to try something. Things don't fall in your lap, right? And so both stories are actually saying that you had purpose and intention on each decision that you made as part of your career.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that. There are realities of life beyond your career that influence your decision making too, right? And if you're in a situation where you're married and you have a couple children and you have obligations and maybe you have a mortgage, et cetera, waking up one morning going, I think I'm just going to change my job and go over and, flip burgers at McDonald's because that's where I want to be and that's my passion. Your partner might have something to say about that. Or, there could be some real world implications that, will slow down your transition. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but I think, we can't just isolate our feelings or wants for our career because they're absolutely influenced by things around us, which could be family, it could be health, it could be the economy. In my case, the economy got me a couple times along the way, and they do influence your ability, and then most likely how you're actually wired internally. Like Lisa, it sounds like you're cautious and you want to make sure you've got everything covered. I'm kind of the same way, and I think Chidi's got a little bit of ability to say, yeah, I'm like that, but I'm willing to take a little bit more of a risk because I believe it's going to work out. And I think you have to, at some point, take that leap of faith and say, I think it's going to work out, and like me leaving the government, my dad said, you're crazy. What are you doing? And I said, I think eventually I'm going to have a better career. I had no idea. Truthfully, my friends were running around with cell phones, like the big brick cell phones. And I want in on that. And it's like, and they get to go golfing. Wow, could be wrong with that. Of course, little did I know you got to work the weekends and the nights to make up for the time you go golfing. That was it. But I also felt that, because it wasn't the right environment I was in, I think something inside me said, I think I will do better long term. And that's that whether you call it belief in yourself or a leap of faith or whatever you call it, you have to listen to that. And in my case, I got lucky, lots of hard work, of course, but a few things fall your way, and I'm very happy with the choice I've made. No regrets at all. And I think, if you wanted to our viewers or listeners out there, when's the right time? I don't know. It's up to you. It's up to your own situation. But if you're not happy with what you're doing, you do need to make a change at some point. And it might be closer to my situation where it takes 3 or 4 or 5 iterations to get there, or it might be closer to Chidi's, where it's like it's similar and it's an evolution. It's just a different perspective, but it's just, it feels good. But if you don't do that, you're going to be resigned to the world you're in, and that's okay too, as long as you accept that. But to get to that position where you have no regrets, you do have to take that leap of faith, and it is not easy. Like Chidi said, it is not easy, because every bone in your body is fighting against it, because it's all about survival and all that sort of thing. You know, and it's very rare that somebody says, hey, you know, we're going to give you a 7-figure job, come over here and do this and that. Like the world doesn't happen like that. I mean, it might happen to a few people, but the vast majority of us have to slog through it. And there's risk in leaving the known for the unknown. But you just have to take that risk and do your homework ahead of time and try to mitigate that risk as much as you can. And the rewards are there. You may not make any more money, but your happiness factor may be through the roof, just because you're just in a way better situation for helping other people. Like Chidi says, like her passion is to help others. That is amazing, right? So anyway, I think, you know, you got to take that risk, otherwise, and only you know when the right time it is.
So we've got also a bundle of questions around, all right, so, you know, it seems like we're exploring topics around big shifts or pivots or something that's very different. But what if we still want to stay in the company and figure out how to move further up along? So it's the same company, it's not a pivot necessarily, but it's advancing the career. And there are people, you know, Rob, you said it depends on where you are in your life, right? And back in my days, yes, you know, for the last 17 years when I was in Hong Kong, for me, it was always about career. And so it was really moving up that ladder. So I just want to take some time to explore. It's not a pivot right now. We're not looking about a different industry or going from corporate to entrepreneur. It's in a company, but I want to move up. I want to move further. Let's explore that a bit. Any thoughts, Rob, about how your career just started moving up and what guidance you could give there?
Yes, I would say, if you're in a company that you like, and in a stream of work that you like, take the opportunity, particularly when you're in your first third of your career, to explore within the company. If the company says, hey, we're going to put a new computer system in, and you go, I don't know anything about computers, but it's a project and it's something, try it. Or, you know, and try as much as you can to learn different functions. It might be a function of a company, or it might be just different aspects or different departments. Because if you do have aspirations to move up, in my world, people graduate and within 3 years they want a project manager title, and it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You got to get some experience. You got to, you know, and they get angry at you that you're slowing them down. No, go work over here, get this experience, do this, do that. Because when you move up the chain, you can't go back and do this. You can't experiment and move around. You start to, it's like a pyramid, you start to limit what you can do. So if you're in your first third of your career, take that opportunity, move around and explore more about the business. Because as you do move up, you will fully understand, yeah, actually I spent a year doing that or working with these people. And it will make you a better manager or a better boss or better CEO or just a better employee of the company. So that would be my 2 cents. Take it and absolutely milk it.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that, Rob. Actually, where I work, I'm with Estee Lauder. What we encourage are stretch assignments. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like, yes, it's unpaid, it's more work stuff, but find a space that you love, that you want to explore, and say, is there a stretch assignment that you could use resources for? I'm in, right? And be very clear on, I'm going to commit 10% of my job time to do the stretch, and make sure your manager and the other manager knows. But that's an informal way to get access to other departments, other leaders, other parts of the business. Step out and ask. Yeah, the stretch project I find works for just expanding that network first, because the more people that know you, the more that you're able to start being in talent discussions. That's where it happens, right? The move and progression is in talent discussions, and formally for large companies, that's how it works.
Absolutely. The larger the company, the physically harder it is for the execs to know everybody face to face. So you need to rely on the managers below you to promote people up, promote them in terms of, this person I think is a good person. And the way you do that as an employee is get more exposure to more people. And they say, Yeah, that Lisa, she really rocked on that project, or she's really good at that, or Chidi's awesome. You know, I work with her over here, and you get others promoting you up rather than just yourself. So yeah, totally
Chidi,
agree.
anything to add around this piece?
Honestly, I would say all of you have, made really good points, and it also makes sense to me. So trying out new opportunities at the company, offering to help as well. So at Deloitte, we do have this thing called practice development. It's not billable work, but it helps in building the practice. So offering to help on those projects that, for instance, might not be billable work, but because you want to help out or because you want to gain experience in that area, it also gives you visibility with the senior manager or the partner who might be on that on billable work as well, because that helps you get visibility. So just trying out new things, putting yourself out there. Yeah, I would say those are the things that helped me, because I joined Deloitte in 2020 January, and I think last year I got my promotion from consultant to senior consultant, and those were the things that I had to do to get to that level, putting myself out there, offering to help, and bringing my best self to work and showing up, bringing a positive attitude. Yeah, so.
Great. Yeah, and I want to add one thing is be open with your manager, right? Just tell them I'm looking to advance and let them know. And what is it that I need to support and bridge with, right? Because if people don't know it's something that you're moving towards, you will be forgotten almost, right? So it is both ways. I know companies have a responsibility to support their employees, but you have a responsibility for your own career. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to move on to the last section. And I know there's some other questions we'll try to get to towards the end. And this is really around current career trends. What's happening now? What's best for us? And we've all heard, right? There's something called the Great Resignation now that's actually happening in the US, and some in Canada. And that's kind of underway. So, and effective because of the pandemic and this working from home. So as the industry grapples with talent shortages, right? We want to explore this. What are you noticing in your organizations now with what's happening around what's the Great Resignation right now that you want to share? Rob, do you want to go first?
I feel like I'm hogging all the time. We are experiencing, unprecedented pressure, I would say. The industry is short of people. Our competitors, when I grew up through the industry, there was the unwritten rule: do not actively poach from other companies. If employees approach you, that's fine, but don't go and it seems like right now everyone is trying to steal everyone's employees, because the talent pool is just, I'm not sure where everyone went. Did they all go on vacation? Are they coming back? Because I'd like to know. But there's just seems to be, there's a gap. And so the first things we're doing, I mean, there's a couple of things. Getting real back to basics, and students out there will love this, is I've been pushing the student program at Bird because it was not in place, and we're finally rolling now. Our first cohorts are coming through. We have 63 students across the company in for the summer, and then we're going to continue on with the fall work terms and winter work terms, because we have to rebuild the base, right? And we have to build up, and it's take intake from there. The other thing is communicating and communicating and communicating. And it's like, we used to say, people are our biggest asset. We have to, you have to concentrate on career paths for your people, good managers, and communicate. And all of that was happening, but it was all kind of in amongst everything else. Well, we are really need to focus on that and create that two-way interaction. And COVID has definitely not helped with this. Most of our meetings are like this. You don't have face-to-face. We've hired new people. You haven't even seen them in some cases. You have to find ways to over-communicate and have a lot of interaction with people. Otherwise, they just kind of feel disconnected, and you know, in an active market, you know, my buddy just went over to company B, I think I'll go over there, right? They seem like good people. And then you have to create an environment where people feel like they're being listened to, that they're getting good training, good education, good opportunities to move up. That doesn't mean you're going to be president tomorrow, but there's you know, an environment there where you can fit in, and it's not easy. You really have to work at it. And communication is the first word that came to mind was communicate, and I wrote it 3 times. Because that's exactly what you got to do. Over communicate at this point, just so that people know what's going on in the execs' heads and where we're at, where we're going. Do we have a plan? Yes, we have a plan. Are we going to be in business next month? Well, that's the plan. Here's the details. So that would be my first word there on that. And I think I'll stop there and let Chidi or someone else jump in.
Yeah, so the Great Resignation, that's an interesting one. So I've been reading a lot about the Great Resignation, and people are quitting, but they aren't quitting to stay at home. They are quitting to go on to other opportunities. And I think, you know, with COVID and people staying at home, a lot of people had time to reflect on, you know, what they would like to see their future look like, what they want to go into in the future. So I think that COVID definitely played a huge role in that. And, you know, at Deloitte, even though, you know, sometimes people might quit, and there are still projects, right? There are lots on tons of projects, you know, there are projects related to artificial intelligence, you know, machine learning, like all those fun projects, like those positions still get filled. And so I wouldn't really consider it a loss if, you know, someone quits a company and they go on to something else. Obviously it's for their own good, but also those roles still get filled up as well. And I do think immigration might have also played a role in the Great Resignation as well, because you know, obviously I read the news sometimes and I see that because of COVID, immigration activities slowed down, and so there was a shortage of talent, obviously. So companies weren't, you know, getting access to talent as they were having before COVID. So immigration activities slowing down definitely has impacted it, you know, obviously as a result of COVID. So at my organization, so similar to what Rob said, you know, really communicating what projects that we're working on, the exciting things that are going on, coming up with fresher ideas on how to encourage people to, you know, remain at the company. So yeah, like those types of things that are the types of things I've seen at my organization, you know, communicating, coming up with fresh ideas on how to retain talent, communicating exciting projects that people might want to be involved in. So for instance, let's say someone at Deloitte, for instance, is working on a project that they aren't interested in. Before they might consider quitting, they might want to explore other opportunities at the company, at the current company. And if the company has done a good job of communicating all of the projects that are going on, which maybe, for instance, might happen to be a project that that person who was considering quitting might have been interested in, they might want to explore that rather than quitting the company or resigning. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've seen, and I think it's helpful. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm really conscious of time as well. So just want to take a few moments now, and I know there are questions unanswered. We'll try to answer them by typing as well. But last piece of advice, right? Just around your career going forward for our audience today. Rob, I'll start with you.
I think we've touched on a lot of them. Try to figure out what you really like to do, whether it's a passion or just a strong interest in it. Research the companies that are the best in that field. You could be going out on your own. That could be another direction. But you know, if we'll talk about it from my path with other companies, and then you got to find one where you're you and that company are the right fit. Because I do think that in order for you to be successful in the long run, the company you work for, the environment, the culture has to fit you. You have to fit it. And then it's up to you how much time and effort you want to dedicate to move yourself up the chain. But if you're fighting an internal culture difference and everything else on top of the effort you need to advance your career, it's really hard on you. So find the right fit, and do your research, do your homework.
Katie?
So one piece of advice I would offer is, when you're switching career paths, I know I had said that, it's challenging. So one skill you definitely have to develop is being comfortable in not knowing, or rather, actually the better word is being comfortable in the ambiguity, and just showing up, asking the right questions, having the right conversations, just honestly showing up. Once you show up, like, you've done a huge chunk of the work. Showing up really helps. And try not to get scared that you don't know what's going on, or you're still new. And imposter syndrome is, especially if you're switching careers, imposter syndrome is a big one. Like, don't let that hold you from, doing the best that you can and showing up and trying your best. So just try to build that skill that allows you to be comfortable in the unknown, because honestly, no one knows everything. Even the people who have been at the field for years, there's still a lot of things that they don't know, right? So it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to be to be new in the field. Just show up, put your best work, put your best foot forward, and honestly, it would work out somehow. It always works out. So yeah.
I would totally agree, and I would add, be yourself. Just be you. Don't pretend to be somebody else or what you think they want you to be. Be yourself, and let yourself go, and you will succeed. Yeah, totally agree.
Great. Thank you, Rob and Chidi. Yeah, and my final guidance is really give yourself permission to not know, right? And that's okay. So I think we're very much driven and trained to be human doers, and we forget about human beings, right? And so, as a coach, I always say, come back to that, right? You as a human being, what does that career mean to you, right? And what do you want to build for yourself? What do you want to create for yourself?
Yeah.
So the doing piece is great, it's there, right? But fundamentally, you're a human being, so use that as an anchor for yourself.
Totally agree.
All right, so I want a huge thank you to Rob, Chidi, the faculty, Garcia, Rachel, for supporting us for this event, and a huge thank you to you as a participant in our audience. I mean, without you, there would not be an us in supporting you and providing you with these series. So the next sessions of Alumni Speaker Series will take place in the fall, and we will have a survey that we're going to send, and we would love your feedback. This is what actually encourages us and inspires us and creates what's next and best for you, for our Waterloo students and alumni. And so this will be available at the end of the session, and we would love to hear what topics you want to explore going forward. So the next few days, anyone who's registered will receive an email link for the recording. Will also be on YouTube, and you can share with your friends. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody, and good night or good morning, continue your day wherever you're in the world, and see you soon.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.